How do I get and stay motivated?
Um, well, I mean, there's a couple angles on this. So one is like, why do you require motivation in order to take action?
Mhm.
Which is a first kind of line of questioning.
Yeah.
Which, if someone can say, it's kind of like courage. It's like courage isn't, action without fear. It's action despite fear.
Despite fear.
And
Yeah.
so I would say the equal opposite would be the same with motivation, which would be like it's action despite feeling good about taking action.
Yeah.
You just do it anyways. That's on kind of like the surface level. Underneath of that, though, the amount that someone is, and instead of like motivation is very, I think the reason the answers to this are so difficult is because no one has defined it. You need to define motivation, right? So if I were to define it, I would say the likelihood that someone takes a desired action. Okay, so if we use that as our proxy for it, then the likelihood of someone taking a desired action is correlated pretty closely with their deprivation around the desired outcome. And so if you are incredibly hungry and you haven't eaten in 3 days, the likelihood that you are going to be motivated to eat is high. Now, if you've just eaten, the motivation is very low. And so oftentimes, you would think, okay, well, if that's true, then wouldn't people who lack money be very motivated to get money?
Right. But not always the case.
Right. And I think that's because money is not a physiological need, it's a psychological thing. And so because of that, then it's how do you create deprivation around money? Which is different. And so if you are the richest person of the 5 friends you have, but all 5 of you are broke, you might have very little deprivation around money. As soon as you get around people who make 10 times more than you, all of a sudden you're like, wow, I didn't even know we could live this way. I didn't know this was possible, or I didn't know this level of achievement was something that anyone could really do. Maybe
Right.
I see it on Instagram or I see it on TV, but it's not something that like real people do. But when you meet those real people, you're like, they're made of flesh and blood like me. Like maybe this could be possible. And then as soon as that question of like, this could be possible happens, then all of a sudden it's like, boom, you stretch out what could happen versus where you are. And then that's what creates this rubber band of motivation, which is why, I mean, there was that famous Harvard study, which is, you're the average of your reference group, who you compare yourself to. And so I think that if you can choose to compare yourself to people who are doing significantly better than you, you will feel significantly worse.
Yeah, I was going
And
to
as a
say,
result,
it doesn't always do well for your mental health. Yeah.
No, but to be fair though, I think we're talking about the science of achievement, not the art of fulfillment.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, it's a good
feeling very
distinction.
bad about yourself, there's plenty of people who have succeeded very well feeling bad about themselves. And this is me being an advocate of that. I'm just saying like these are components that influence people doing what they need to.
Did you grow up? How did you grow up? Like socioeconomically?
See, I would say I was Baltimore rich, not like world rich. You know what I mean?
Got it,
And
okay.
so, like the richest professions I knew of were doctors, and my dad's a doctor. So
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah. So I didn't want for anything.
Yeah. Solid.
But he was also like first generation immigrant and built his entire practice from nothing. So like
I was wondering.
I have
about
this
that. Yeah.
juxtaposition of like we never used paper towels because he still lived that way, and we drive out of the way to buy milk at the cheaper store that was 20 or 30 cents less. Like we only shopped at Costco. Like I wore Kirkland basically my entire upbringing. So like it's a little bit of a split thing. Like the way that I was raised in terms of the values is absolutely one of a first generation immigrant. And the way that I think about money, all of those things came from him.
Sure.
And so yeah, in that way, I would say it's atypical.
Does he understand what you do here?
I do business things.
Yes. So I'm sure that's what he tells us, right?
Yeah, he's a businessman.
He's got a building. That's all.
Yeah,
you
he's
need
a
to know.
businessman.
Yeah,
and it's
that's funny.
Not inaccurate.
That's funny. Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, I always wonder. I'm like, how do parents explain what their kids do, especially when it's not a traditional profession? I kind of wondered about that. I figured you must have had some parental, not necessarily motivation, but well, let me ask you this. What sort of stuff that you grew up with, immigrant mindsets, do you think you still use now, for better or for worse? Like maybe Layla's like, dude, can you not rewash those things? We have a whole box. But also something where you're like, nah, I learned this when I was 8 and I'm still doing it and I'm never going to stop. Besides work ethic and stuff, like the basics.
Well, I would actually say that the vast majority of the things that I learned from many of those behaviors I've unlearned.
Unlearned.
Yeah. So like, I don't care if I use a paper towel or not. I don't insist that I mow the lawn. I'm happy to pay somebody else to mow the lawn. My father mowed the lawn himself, even though he had no need to do so until I was old enough to mow the lawn, and then I did that.
Okay, yeah. I was going to say, it didn't make you mow the lawn. What the hell's going on there? Yeah, no, that makes more sense.
Yeah, it just took 4 hours. It felt a lot of grass. So that was like my Saturdays.
I can relate.
Right, and so the thing is like, I'll say this, it's very difficult to go back in time and say, hey, this is why I do the things that I do. Yeah. I honestly have no idea. The only thing that I can guess is that I have been rewarded for doing these things, and the more I've done them, the more rewarded I've gotten, and so I do more and more of it.
I heard you say in a piece of content that you don't need motivation to act. And I wonder if that mindset has ever led you in the wrong direction, like doing something without processing, maybe an impulsive kind of thing, for lack of a better word.
I would say that I have a desire for novel stimulus.
Mhm.
So like new things I think excite me more than they probably should. And so it's taken me a long time to unlearn that, or at least manage the excitement and then not take action.
I see. Yeah, okay. I can relate. I can definitely relate to that. I think that's also maybe a human nature thing, but some of us are definitely wired for novelty in a way that maybe gets destructive if it's indulged a little bit too much. I think a lot of your followers assume that you've always been hyper confident and driven. I wonder if there's a version of you that would surprise people, like a awkward phase or identity crisis maybe that you went through. Like, do you have like a goth emo Alex Hormozi phase?
The honest truth is no.
No.
I've I've always been pretty driven. And I think that the people who knew me earlier on were like, yeah, obviously this is what happened.
Mhm.
Like, so I have the equal opposite of like, no one is surprised. And so that's probably not, the motivational speech that people who are listening want to hear. Um, but it's also the truth. And so I mean, from a very young age, I wanted to make money. I wanted to be in shape. I wanted to have a girl that I thought was attractive. And so I just did everything I could to make sure that those things happened.
What age do you think you were when you started consciously being like, I have to plan this out and execute on it? It's like, a lot of kids who are younger, they just kind of feel their way through it. Or were you like, age 12, here's what's got to happen?
I didn't tie things to age. It was more just like these are the things that I want to do or want to have happen. Um, there was a girl that I dated many years ago before Layla, and she said that her goal was to make $10,000 a month. And I think at the time my goal was to make $100,000. I can't remember what it was. And she said, do you think that I'll achieve my goal? And I said, well, I don't know, because I was making more money than she was at the time, and I was like, I don't know. These are some things to consider. And I said, well, do you think I'll achieve my goal? And she said, yes. And I was like, why? And she said, because it's all you talk about. And so I bring this up because I
Yeah,
think there's some science around writing goals and things like that.
sure.
I actually really haven't written many of my goals down at all.
Mhm.
It's just that I literally think of nothing else.
Yeah, you probably don't really need to remember it if it's the thing that's
No, it's
going
the
through
only
your head
thing I think about all
24/7.
day. And
Yeah.
so I would say that, and you know what? And like, is that the right way? Is that the wrong way? I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I would say that for those of you who do have that, it will increase the likelihood that you get them.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think about work?